December 17, 1903. The bitterly cold wind whipped across the sand dunes of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The sky was a pale gray, the kind that presses down on the earth and chills to the bone. On this remote strip of coastline, two brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, prepared their fragile flying machine, the Flyer, a strange construction of wood, cloth, and wires. It looked more like a giant kite than a plane. Yet, within moments, they would attempt something the world had never seen: a controlled, powered flight. The fate of human ambition hung in the balance. The Wright brothers were not born into fame or wealth. Orville, the younger, was quiet and meticulous. Wilbur, the older, intense and thoughtful. From their earliest years in Dayton, Ohio, they were captivated by the idea of flight. A simple toy helicopter, made from a piece of paper, a stick, and a rubber band, sparked a fascination that would define their lives. As boys, they dissected bird wings, sketched designs, and debated the mysteries of air and lift. This curiosity evolved into obsession. The sky was no longer a distant horizon, it was a challenge, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Before Kitty Hawk, the brothers spent countless years experimenting with kites and gliders. Summers were spent in windy fields, testing designs, measuring air currents, and noting how control surfaces affected flight. Each failure was meticulously documented: torn wings, broken spars, crashes into the sand. Yet, each setback fueled their determination. They read every scientific paper they could find, wrote letters to other inventors, and tirelessly calculated angles, weights, and balance. Unlike others who sought mere altitude, the Wrights sought control, the ability to direct their flight with precision. The choice of Kitty Hawk was strategic. The winds were steady, and the sands soft enough to cushion crashes. The brothers transported the pieces of the Flyer by train, over miles of rugged terrain, assembling the machine in a simple hangar of their own construction. On December 14, they made their first glider tests with minimal success. Each gust of wind threatened to topple the fragile structure, yet the brothers meticulously adjusted angles, control surfaces, and wing warps, honing their craft against nature itself. December 17 dawned cold and unforgiving. Orville and Wilbur worked silently, checking every bolt, wire, and wooden brace. At 10:35 a.m., the engine was fired, a small, 12-horsepower gasoline motor that rattled and shook the entire frame. Orville lay prone on the lower wing, gripping the controls, heart pounding. Wilbur steadied the Flyer with every ounce of strength he had. Then, with a judder and a roar, the propellers bit into the wind. Slowly, the machine lifted. The world seemed to hold its breath. For 12 full seconds, the Flyer stayed aloft, covering 120 feet before gently settling back onto the sand. Orville leapt up, a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief on his face. They had done it. Humanity had flown. Wilbur's turn followed, pushing the machine slightly farther and higher. By the end of the day, 4 flights had been completed, each longer than the last, culminating in Wilbur's flight of 852 feet in 59 seconds, almost a minute in the sky, controlled and stable. The nearby townsfolk watched with curiosity, but most did not grasp the significance. Skeptics dismissed it as a curiosity, a novelty. Newspapers in Dayton received the telegram slowly, and the wider world remained unaware of the magnitude of this achievement. Yet for the brothers, it was a monumental triumph, the culmination of decades of calculation, experimentation, and unyielding belief in their vision. The Flyer was just the beginning. Over the next decade, the Wright brothers refined their designs, extending flight duration, increasing stability, and proving that powered human flight was not only possible but practical. Airplanes would go on to shrink continents, carry armies, mail, and eventually passengers, transforming the very notion of distance. But it all traced back to that cold December morning at Kitty Hawk, when two determined brothers dared to defy gravity itself. December 17, 1903, was more than a date, it was a turning point in human history. The Wright brothers took what had been a dream, an aspiration whispered by generations, and turned it into reality. In those fleeting seconds above the sand, they demonstrated that with vision, patience, and courage, humanity could rise, literally, above its limitations. The sky was no longer a boundary, it was an invitation. And from that day forward, no dream of flight would ever be out of reach.